Yes, there's a document that'll be in the drawer with the warrants, et cetera, that you can sign. And just to give everybody a background as to why we're doing this, we were contacted today by the Department of Revenue through the Division of Local Services. They understand what's been happening here with the fire. They understand that it's put a significant strain on our budget as far as the funds that we're going to have to pay for overtime, all of the costs associated with handling this emergency. So by declaring this a state of emergency, it helps the town be able to pursue and apply for grants and other funds that will help us to offset the costs, and allows us to set up a special revenue account through our accounting so that we don't have to hit this to the general fund and we can deficit spend. It's just a kind of a legality thing as far as with the accounting, but this way, this is what the Department of Revenue requested that we do.
Perfectly. Well stated, Christine. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move to item number 4. Chief Mike Fussell has a presentation that he would like to give in regards to the fire at 147 Log Cabin Road. I am going to share my screen at this time. Mike, just tell me when you want the screen flipped. Type of thing.
Okay, I'll just state next, please.
Okay, sounds good, sir. Floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you for allowing me some time to just update everybody on the event over at 147 Log Cabin Road. The fire we're currently continuing to ensure is out safely. So just so everybody understands, last Wednesday morning, we received a call for a 50 by 50 brush fire that was approaching the woods. When I left my house on Greenville Road and turned at the landfill where you could have a direct shot down 31, I seen this large column of smoke, so I knew it was going to be more than what was called in initially, based off a 50 by 50 brush fire should not be visible unless you get up close to it. So I started to call mutual aid companies at that point just to get them there sooner. Dave, if you can do the next one. So once we arrived on scene, we updated the fire to be about 400 by 400 feet at that time. We had our initial dispatch. Normally on a brush fire, you would just send a brush fire truck and a tanker and just start to do the work. Based off the column of smoke that I seen, we ended up bringing a structural engine and the brush and the tanker because we did not know what we were going to come up against at the time. So when we got there, we did see a large fire, so we started to set up our operation. Along with, at that time, we had brought in tankers because we knew we would need water for this, based off of being a brush fire. We needed more tankers than we did need structural engines. So we started to set up to work the fire the normal way we do with our mutual aid partners. As we upgraded the alarm for additional tankers, it brought in a couple of communities that one of them has the chief of that department is in charge of the task forces in our area. They work with the state, and so we looked at the fire and realized we needed a lot of water for this fire. That's really what it primarily was. It needed this. It was a big area. It was deep into the material that I'll explain in a few minutes that we had. We wanted to make sure, most importantly, it was on the edge of the forest. That forest down there, nobody understands it. It goes from the site all the way down to Route 31, all the way over to Richardson Road, and then on the other side, it just continues there's a lot of land out there. We did not want it to get into that area, so our initial attack was to knock down the back of the wood pile was on fire. But when I say on fire, it was 400 feet by, it was probably about 50-foot flames that we were up against at the beginning because it was running the hill. Because the size of the hill during the event, we GPSed it, and it was 48 feet in height. The pile of debris. So we first and most importantly was we try to knock down some of the heavy fire, but we wanted to make sure the forest didn't catch on fire, because then we would have another situation on our hands that would have been hard to deal with, because we would have had multiple fires going at that time. So we were successfully able to keep it out of the forest at that time. And then as the other engines and equipment arrived, I met with a couple of the chiefs that come with those engines, and we knew there was no way, because remember, Ashby doesn't have fire hydrants. We have to either go get the water with tankers or bring it to us with a 5-inch hose that we lay down. 5-inch hose is very time consuming to lay down. And I'll explain that as we go through this, because we did lay it down at some point, but it was on day 3 that we did that, because we had a data plan, the size of that stretch of hose. So I'll explain that. So we started to call in task forces that the state has predetermined when you need additional resources. Once it goes past what the community is fighting, the mutual aid compact really helps communities all over the state, including ours, because we only have X amount of people, X amount of equipment. And you'll see through this presentation that it was a massive response to this as it grew in size. So we started to bring in task forces, they call, which consists of 6 tankers, which carry the water. And they bring in 2 engines, because you need to additionally either pump the water to the tankers to fill them, or you need to pump the water from the tankers to put on the fire. So at that point, we figured it was about 2 acres that was burning, but a lot of it, after we knocked the heavy fire on the backside, it was coming out of the top side, the smoke was. So we knew we had a large area that was on fire, but it was underground at the time. So just so everybody understands what we were actually fighting, was the primary materials that we've seen in the fires were stumps, wood debris, logs. There was brush, and there were some signs of concrete and brick, and yard waste, leaves, clippings, and etc. But remember, this was 48 feet in depth. We're talking. This wasn't just on top of the ground. Dave, you can go to the next one. So our primary objective, of course, was to contain the fire, which means to get around it and stop its spread to wherever it would be, whether it's into the forest or heading toward houses or any of that stuff. So we were able to start the containment side at that point. The containment side went on for many days, multiple days, because the containment was not just getting around it, but we needed to get to it before you could even start what we call extinguishing the fire, at physically putting the fire out, which really didn't start until multiple days into the event. And then the maintenance, we'll call it at the end after extinguishing, is just what we're in the maintenance phase. We currently have, we're watching the pile, we're spraying the pile, and as each day we go there, we're trying to ensure that the actual fire is out, so we can state that at some point. Dave? Can you go up a little more? Thank you. So like I explained, the day 1 would be the day we arrived on Wednesday. So we had us, and we had multiple mutual aid companies that were, along with task forces, tanker task forces, that helped us get the water to the fire. Once we realized where our water source was, it was located at the Fitchburg Rod and Gun Club, was the best access to water at the time. So we set up a drafting site to fill the tankers down there. And then up top on the property, we were able to set up a large dump site, they call it. So we set up 3 porta tankers on one side and 3 on the other to receive the water that we were bringing up the hill from the water source. We set up at the top. So once we were done calling all the task forces and mutual aid companies, it took a few hours to get everything going because we ended up asking for 2 of the task force from Massachusetts and 1 task force from New Hampshire. Because as everybody's seen in the news in the last few weeks, Massachusetts has many, many brush fires going. And in order to fight those brush fires like our community, that community doesn't have a lot of resources. So they also activated brush and tanker task forces. So the state was very taxed for equipment. So we were able to go to our New Hampshire partners, and they were able to provide us those 6 tankers and two engines to help us fight this fire. So day 1, by the time the day was going, and we ended that day, we ended up with 3 task forces that consisted of so there would be 18 tankers, including ours. So we had roughly 19 tankers, 6 structural engines plus our 3 engines that we had. So we had nine engines pumping some of this water. And then to fight the fire, because as the fire was popping out and the heat was popping out in different places, we didn't want to put our folks on this. I continue to call it a pile because it ends up, once you see it, it was just a pile of material. So we didn't want to put anybody in harm's way. So during that special call, we asked for 2 tower ladders that we pumped all this water into, because they have on average 100-foot extension, and so they can reach 100 feet from side to side. So it covers a great area if you have 2 of them. So they were covering more than 2, and they have a reach on the stream of probably 75 feet or more. So if you think about it, we were probably covering about 600 feet across with these 2 pieces of equipment, which kept everybody out of that hot zone and the danger zone, because we don't know if it was gonna sink in and collapse. So that's how we figured this was the safest operation to run, and it takes a lot of manpower to do that tanker shuttle. So that's why there were so many apparatus that it takes to do that. Once we realized on day 1, the system we set up was very successful. During this, when you activate a task force, the state actually brings in multiple chief officers. So most days we were working with myself, and I had anywhere from 2 to 3 other communities chiefs, just to help with the logistics, help with everything that's going on, because that's a very big operation, and no person could do it by themselves at all. So that helps. You can see the resources that draws. This was just Ashby. It had that many pieces of equipment and folks there. So it was also straining that system in the state. Many of these partners are our local communities, so they were also sending folks to help us. So they were also shorthanded, because normally if we go to do mutual aid at another community, like we did today, we went to a structure fire in another community to help them out. We were there in and out in probably 2 hours. This was a multi-day operation. So it's a commitment. It takes a lot of time. It's not the normal way. So it ends up being a strain on the department. Once the department committed someone to us, they were in Ashby for, on average, a 10 to 12 hour shift each day, working with us. So you can see that the resources and the time commitment is tremendous. But this is what, after day 1, when the chiefs met and talked about this whole thing during the day, we felt we would mimic the same setup for the next day, because each day you don't know. Normally it's like go and put the fire out and everybody go home. After day one, we knew it was going to be day two and maybe more at that point. So we mimicked it, meaning the next day we had previously requested the 3 teams to come the next morning to meet at 8 o'clock. We set up the same situation. Well, just go back to day one, just so everybody's comfortable with it. Once there's a fire and we're on scene, we don't leave the fire until the fire is out. And if we're unable to put the fire out in the first day, what we do is we assign a fire watch to the fire. So we try to get it to a phase where it's manageable. And we were able to do it the first night, but with the fire watch, they're there to help us in case something happens. I can report that evening at 3:30, I received a call that the fire had flared back up. So we redispatched our town and a couple of New Hampshire towns because we knew we had a lot of folks coming at 8 o'clock. So we didn't want to, get into that situation of bothering that. So we dispatched other communities. Fortunately, we were able to keep it in check until the folks arrived at 8 o'clock, and we had all those communities, upwards of 25 communities that day to help us with that. So we were able to get it back in check and then continue to remember the containment. We're not putting this fire out at this point because it's hard to get to. It's in a lot of debris. It's 48 feet in depth. So there was getting to it issues and a whole bunch of others. So at that point during day two, we made a decision that we needed an excavator to try to find these hot spots, we'll call it, because everything that we could visibly see was knocked down, but there was still a tremendous amount of smoke coming out of the area, I'll call it. So we brought in the excavator. We worked with the excavator. The 2 tower ladders would, wherever that would dig, one would hit the debris pile that came out of it. The other one would hit around where the excavator was to make sure the operator was safe and the machine was safe. And we did that for 2 days. We realized early on day 2 that this was going to go longer than day 2. And we knew we couldn't continue to tax the system with anywhere from 25 to 30 communities in our town. So we needed to minimize that water operation, we call it. So we do normally run with our 5-inch hose when we have structure fires. We're able to lay it down, pump from the water source, and put it on the fire. So we had a strategy, which on day 2, during the day, we took the strategy to lay the 5-inch hose from the water source down at the Rod and Gun Club, excuse me, up to the fire, which would alleviate this tanker shuttle that we were in with all that equipment going back and forth to just maintain a water supply. That way we could pump through the 5-inch hose and minimize the traffic on our road. So during the day on day 2, we used our strategy along with the highway department because we didn't want to. We had originally on day 1 and 2 shut down those roads, so we were really burdening our community. And if we continued with that was going to be hard on everybody. So we made a decision to trench under Richardson Road and trench under Log Cabin Road, so we wouldn't close the road, and we put our 5-inch hose through culverts that allowed that operation to stay active for many days, as you can see, and not shut down the roads and not have us pick up this hose every night. So we were able to, with the help of the highway and many communities, put this 5-inch hose down. It actually is a 3,800-foot run from the water source up to the fire, which is a significant run. On a 5-inch hose, you have friction loss, they call it, because 1, it's the hose, the size of the hose, and 2, it's the elevation changed. It was over 100 feet in elevation from the water hole to the actual fire, so you have to overcome that. So in the middle, not in the middle, in multiple spots, every 1,000 feet, you put another engine in there to repump the water. So it pumps from the water hole to the first engine, to the second engine, to the engine on the top. And it gets you the water like you were right next to the pond at that point because of the pressure that is being pushed up. So it allows at the top for that engine to be able to still put, that hose allows us to put 2,000 gallons a minute onto the fire, which is that's a lot of water. If you do the math in the course of a day, and we hit it many days with that, we were putting upwards of 1 million gallons a day on that fire. And some days that tanker shuttle was doing much more than that, like 1.3 million in water. So that's a massive amount of water. Sometimes we could put a fire, whether it's a house fire or something, out with the tank water we carry. We carry 1,000 gallons. So that puts the volume of water in perspective that we were using to just try to, remember what I said, contain this fire. Contain meaning it wasn't going anywhere, but we need to get a handle on where it is so that we can do strategy around extinguishment. So like we said, day 3 and all the way till we currently have it, we are utilizing that 5-inch hose that is laid down on the ground. We've kept it there. And it has helped us pump the water every day. We meet at 8 o'clock every morning. Well, let me just go back. It took the operation of 25 mutual aid companies in our community for the first 2 days down to 7. So you can see it truly freed up a massive amount of resources for their community, and 2 for surrounding communities that rely on mutual aid from those folks. So from day 3 till actually yesterday, we ran with the 3 engines coming up and 1 engine pumping and 1 ladder putting it on water on the fire. We made a decision yesterday that we're at a point where we call it fire patrol, where we worked with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, who deal with fires all the time, brush fires, forest fires. They have equipment that we're able to set up over the site. So that we're currently in an operation mode where we're using sprinklers. These are commercial grade, can do almost the 2 acres. It's almost like water in the 2 acres all the time, all day. So it helps us, because what we need to do is understand where we're at with the extinguishment, so that we're kind of letting the pile tell us, did we get it all or did we not? But to back up a little, to go to, because part of this operation wasn't just fire suppression. We had what I call the construction site at the same time going. After the first 2 days of trying to use an excavator with maybe a 2-foot bucket, and to try to get across multiple acres was going to take a long time. So we used strategy around, we need multiple pieces of equipment. We need to have a process, what we're going to do, and how we're going to extinguish this, because early on we realized the fire was deep. It wasn't running across the top, it was deep. And remember what I said, it was 48 feet in depth, this pile on 2 acres that we were working on. So we met with the town manager and the select board, and just, we needed more strategy, but like anything, it costs some money to do that. But the goal is we have to put the fire out. The law says the fire has to be extinguished by the community and the fire chief. So we need a strategy to dig out this material, this massive amount of material. It's estimated in the area we were working in, this 220,000 cubic yards of material that we're working with. In the first few days, we ended up digging out about 25,000 cubic yards, because what we had to do as we dig down, we needed to get below what we would call the hot spots to ensure that we're in a spot that was not burning. So we continued this operation. What we had going was, we had upwards of 5 excavators, a large bulldozer, and a front end loader to move all this material, because we had to put it in, we call them windrows, so we could manage it, meaning put it out, continue to put it out, make sure it was out. And then in case there's a problem in the future, we'll have easy access to the material. So that operation continued for the next, I would say, 5 days. I think we might even be on 6 days with the equipment. Today, we did not use any equipment at all because we feel we have at least the cuts we need into the material, the depths we need. And we need the pile to tell us if we're there or not, because you look at it each evening and it looks pretty calm. By the morning, you would have smoke coming out of different areas. So we were this morning, and each day it continues to improve, I'll say. And that's why we're at the operation of it's really soaking it heavily every day right now. That is the goal. Part of that construction process that we engaged on, working with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, we had many agencies up there working with us. They're the experts on what we call, the forest fires and everything. And they requested that we cut a fire line around this pile of material because they did not want it to go into the forest. We didn't. So it was important to do that. So one of the projects simultaneously with a lot of the excavation was they marked out with their technology that they have, they're able to walk through the forest and draw out how they do fire breaks. And a fire break consists of marking out the area you want cut, putting ribbons on it, and then utilizing equipment, fellow bunches, if anybody understands what those are, they tree cutting equipment and grapple that will take out the skidder that will carry the material, because you don't want to add any material to the fire, so you carry it to a safe spot and spread it out over there. So we were able to put a 40-foot fire break around the perimeter of this pile very early on. That was probably day 4. We didn't want this fire to go any further. So we did that along with the help of Department of Conservation and Recreation, was one of the many state agencies we work with, and that's what they do. And that helped ensure that at least we weren't going to have the fire continue further. And we all felt that it was the best thing to do. And it was very important. So that happened pretty quickly. That probably took 1 day to do, massive operation, but it went off very successful. As part of the strategy to contain and extinguish this fire. Dave, you can go to the next one, please. So just to quantify the amount of resources that it's taken, besides the folks on the Ashby Fire Department and many of our departments in town that are very helpful with whether it's traffic or anything we needed to make sure this operation ran smoothly. To date, we've had 68 different fire departments across the state utilizing that task force that we have to help us manage the fire. Remember what I said, if you came today as a department, we would not call that same department for tomorrow, so we wouldn't tax them. The whole system's set up on a statewide level and managed at the state. So once you ask for these resources, they're very good at plotting out what communities can help, what the impact is. And it's a great system that we're allowed to utilize as a community. So the mutual aid, so everybody understands, this is no different than when we went to Brookline today. We don't send them a bill for our services, we help them. Brookline was one of those 68 communities that helped us with this fire, and we won't be receiving a bill from them or any of the other agencies that were there. That's how our statewide mutual aid system works. It's an unbelievable system. It allows a small town like ours with the minimal amount of people and equipment to ramp up when you have the next level of emergency. So it truly helped us get to where we're at. We would not be here today without the resources we had. we've had at least 9 state agencies, and we're talking from the Department of Fire Services through DEP, and we can name them all, very helpful with all of the items we were trying to accomplish during this fire. So Dave? This was week to date last week. Just our department alone and some of the highway folks that helped and police, we used 450 hours to work on this fire. Very taxing on our community, on our department, on all our departments. Remember, we're a call vol department, so most times most of our folks are working elsewhere. So we had folks, fortunately school was still out, so we had a lot of the folks that were in school come help us. And then we, after work, it would almost be like I'll call it the second shift would come in when the folks got out of work and came to work the fire. So that's a tremendous amount of hours. That's probably almost a quarter to a half a year's worth of hours we normally would put on every fire we have. So you can see it's a tremendous strain on our resources. And, I can tell you right now that at this point, a lot of our folks are, we'll call it spent. They've worked hard. They've done a lot, but they're going to continue to just work through it. It's just because guess what? After they go from our fire, they go home, sleep, and go back to their job the next morning and continue to perform at a very high level. So it's excellent what they do. And remember, our operations switched from just going to the fire and putting it out in a couple hours to 24/7. We've been on that site 24 hours a day. We're at 7 days a week or a little more. Someone or multiple people on the fire department have been at the site, ensuring that we're working towards what hopefully we can call soon extinguishment or contained. That we can't remember the product we're working with is expected to combust at some point because of the inherent nature of it. It's wood products. You pile it up, and eventually the heat comes. Everybody's had a mulch pile at their house, and you dig into the middle of it, and there's a little steam coming out of it. So a lot of times, if you leave it long enough, it could combust. So that's the material we're working with up there. So Dave, go ahead, please. I already talked on this, so I won't go any further. You can see the massive amounts of material. That 48,000 was last week. I bet you were at this probably 60 to almost 70,000 cubic yards. If anybody knows that, we're talking in 5 days. We're not talking in 6 months. But look at the amount that is there, 240,000. So we're just, it's a lot of material to try to pick up wet and restack somewhere else. Go ahead, Dave. This is just some of the obstacles and the areas we're working in. We just want to share with everybody. I should take a step back. It's very important for people to understand what we've seen, and there's been a lot of questions, and I put it in my first slide, the early slides, and that's the only material we've seen. I cannot guarantee. We're working on 2 acres. There's upwards of 6 acres of this, so I don't know the other areas. The areas that we're working in that were 48 feet, if you picture that pile where that hose is shooting right now, that's probably only 20 feet from the ground. So this pile has been reduced substantially. And we continue to see consistently the material that you're seeing there: stumps, logs. There are bricks, there are some concrete, and we haven't seen anything else. I can personally verify that, but I can't personally guarantee that on the rest of the land what is there. Next. Just continuing, this was early in that fire that, like I was telling everybody, this is what we pulled up to. You can see the tree line there. That's heavy fire. That goes down 400 feet like that. We can't even see the other end of it. Goes around the corner. That was pretty much the start of what we seen. And remember, it was called in as 50 by 50. So this is what we showed up to, and you can see the height of that was the original height of the pile. And if you look back, you've seen that last picture, it's reduced substantially because the fire is burning deep into that pile. So that's what we pulled up to, and this is what we've been working with. You see the terrain's very rugged, very deep. There's a lot of hollows and holes, and that's why we did not want to put our folks into these areas. That's why we relied on the tower ladders to really get into this area, and it was very safe, and it actually was a very effective operation, and it was by many chiefs that showed up to help. Thought it was the best way we should approach this operation. Go ahead, please. Sorry it's taken so long, but I'm trying to be so thorough so people understand. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions, and I wish the past week I had time to explain, but I didn't. And I'm trying to just do it this evening as briefly as possible and put everybody at ease as much as they can. So this is the operation I was talking about. So if you see the smoke and the towel at it, and for this, usually two of them, maybe another picture will show you the multiple. And we would just continue to work the pile. And then as we received the heavy equipment, we would work a bigger area to try to extinguish it. Go ahead, Dave. So you start to see the heavy equipment that we brought in and trying to dig out the pile to be able to get to that debris. That smoke is really coming from underneath, deep down. So you can see that one was trying to hit the pile and one's trying to keep the excavator operator safe, because occasionally they would unearth stuff and it would ignite. So we wanted to keep him safe, and we didn't want any equipment catching on fire either. So next. Just the area and the length that you're seeing. This is how the pile originally started off. If you look at the height of the trees, and as we go through some of these pictures, the pile's reduced by upwards of 20 or 25 feet. Go ahead, please. Just some more pictures of the backside and the ruggedness that we're seeing of the areas we're trying to get to. You do the next one, Dave, please. Just shows you the multitude of, these were the tankers we're talking about. So some are going back to get filled up, and the ones coming up the hill are bringing the water to the fire. The goal with the amount of tankers, so people understand, you don't want to run out of water. So we want to have a constant stream on the other end. So in order to do that, someone's always dumping, someone else always filling. Remember, those tower ladders are flowing 1,000 gallons a minute. Some of these tankers, on average, they only hold 2,500 and maybe 3,000 gallons. So 3 minutes, that entire truck is dropped onto the fire. So just to put it into perspective, that's why it takes so many to maintain that stream. Go ahead, Dave. Thank you. Just another look at the size of the pile. These piles here are what we had dug out with the heavy equipment. We had to dig the back of the pile, bring it to the front of the pile, extinguish it as we bring it up, and then continue to dig down to find what we would call the cold zone. Go ahead, Dave. Just some shots of as we deployed some folks to be a little closer to some of the areas and some of the machines. And pan over to that other. This is some of the excavation. That what you're looking at is probably from the original top. About the length of an excavator is about 25 feet. That's as we dig. This is what we see. So you can see every time we dig, there's a new layer of fire. We have to put it out every time we dig. That's why it's taking so long to put this fire out, because it's so deep into this pile. Go ahead, Dave, please. Just some more areas that we see it. I wanted to be as thorough as I could so people could see what we're up against and feel comfortable with what we're working with. So I hope that's at least a good start. Once we get away from the amount of work that we're putting in on this fire. At any point, I'd be glad to explain further some of the operation to anybody that would like to reach out to me at this point. But I wanted to at least bring the community current of where we're at. We continue to, like I said, we're in the sprinkler mode right now. So we will be, I can't give you a day we'll be leaving. It's a day to day. Believe me, I'd like to go home and see my family, but we're at a point we need to just continue to make sure this fire is out and we're all comfortable with leaving the property. So thank you, Select Board and Christine. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to our community about this.
Chief Bussell, thank you for coming on tonight with that presentation. It was very informative. Thank you personally to your guys. You know, people, it was a lot of guys. Mike has an awesome training program and his officers do as well. There was a lot of auxiliary guys that was just, that operation was massive and you guys just did an awesome job. And I can't say thank you enough. Couple people that I'd also like to just thank, and I might be missing a few and I apologize. The police department, the highway was ideal, digging the road, laying this hose down for these guys. The COA, the Council on Aging and Lisa Lavagna, organizing food, drinks and stuff for these guys up there. MEMA was ideal. They set up a trailer there for these guys to cool off. You know, you're dealing with 80, 90-degree days. These guys just worked their butt off. Shepherds with the multiple pieces of equipment that dug out this fire so it didn't reach the tree line. The Salvation Army came up. They delivered meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I believe. Matt Perna also for cleaning and helping these guys clean the equipment today, laying out all that hose. It was just unbelievable. Again, the auxiliary guys, just unbelievable. These guys do not get paid. You need to realize the auxiliary guys on the fire department are up there busting their hump because they love the job and they didn't receive a dime. Again, Powell Construction, Thomas Fuel. Mike, can you touch base on how much fuel you think we actually went through up there real quick?
Sure. We received the bills today, I'd like to say. So on average, because I can only quantify it in you know, cost, is it was costing about $6,000 a day for fuel to keep the equipment running because you can't move them once they're in place. So you have to bring a diesel to the site and keep the fire engines running. So it was unbelievable. It probably went on for 5 days. So incredible. A lot, like Dave states, with the community. When we needed something as a community, it doesn't matter. I know some of these people get paid, but when you need help, they dropped their everyday life and they came and helped us because they knew we had a serious situation. So whether it's the gentleman delivering oil or someone driving a excavator or Matt Perner stopping everything because he knows we need our equipment back in service and helping the community, it was unbelievable with the outpouring. I could be on here all night pointing out folks that truly just even sent up kudos, like whatever you need, just call us. It was amazing and touching for our folks that are working this operation, and even for our community. It really tells you the spirit of the town that we all live in. So they rally around what has to get done, and we make it happen at a very high level. So besides myself being proud, I'm sure many folks on this call are very proud of the community and the folks that are within our community, how they step up when we truly need it.
Thank you, Chief. Also, Leominster Canteen provided services. Leominster Emergency Management was up there as well. It was just a massive operation, and I can't say enough how proud I am of residents, the employee, just everybody. It was just unbelievable, unbelievable. Words can't say enough. So thank you again, Chief Bustle.
Chief, I just wanted to say thank you for all
Yes.
your efforts. You did a tremendous job for the town, and we're very proud of the operation. It was massive. You did a very good job getting everybody together, working well. I appreciate all the Ashby Fire Department, everyone that helped out, and just truly want to thank you very much for all your efforts.
Well, thank you.
Thank you,
I'll
Mary.
pass that on to my folks.
Thank you.
Also, I found on later this evening, just so the residents know, we did take 2 water samples of products up there this evening. One was VOC, and the other was for PFAS. Those were brought to a state lab, and we should have the results, if not later this week, next week as well. And I see that people have their hands up tonight. Tonight is just kind of an informational session. There is a lot of different legal issues that are going on with this incident. So we can't really elaborate on certain things. So for tonight, we can't take any questions about this. Sorry, Harold. If you want to call me personally, you can. Our town administrator is willing to answer any questions that she possibly can. Thank you. Christine, did you have something that you wanted to add this evening?
Well, first of all, I wanted to, again, thank Chief Bustle and his crew, all the men and women up there. They were fantastic. I had never seen an operation like that before, and it was overwhelming to go up there and see the response that we received, the mutual aid, all of the state agencies. I just wanted to kind of give you a little update on what we're doing on the administrative side of it. As you remember, a couple of months ago, at the end of June, I believe, we had a number of residents come onto the select board meeting and were concerned about the increased activity that was happening at the site. I then reached out to Senator John Cronin's office, to his Director of Constituent Services, Beth Walsh, and she was extremely responsive and assisting us in getting the attention of the Department of Environmental Protection. So just a little bit of background, back in October 2019, the town had issued 3 cease and desist orders to the residents of record, the 3 members of the Ethier family. Though the Ethier family, they then filed a appeal of the building inspector cease and desist order with the Zoning Board of Appeals. That they had a hearing on that matter, and the Zoning Board of Appeals upheld the building inspector's decision. They then hired a legal counsel who filed an complaint with Air District Court to appeal the building inspector and the Zoning Board of Appeals ruling. Then COVID hit, and the courts pretty much shut down. So for the past 2 years since that complaint was filed, we were kind of in a standstill because the complaint and the legal case was kind of languishing in the courts. We could not enact our cease and desist order. So in June, a number of residents and butters notified us that there was increased activity at the site. We reached out to Senator Cronin's office to try to help us get assistance from the Department of Environmental Protection and the Attorney General's office, and they were working diligently with us on that. We were trying to understand what next steps we could take. We were working with our legal counsel to understand, now that the courts were open, where we were with the legal case at Air District Court. Ultimately, the Ethier's attorney voluntarily decided to dismiss the court action, and his attorney filed a voluntary dismissal with prejudice in the Air District Court, which meant that the town's cease and desist order was back in full force and effect. So we're working with the building inspector to determine what steps we could take now that the cease and desist order was valid when the fire broke. So immediately I was able to contact Senator Cronin's office, the people at the Department of Environmental Protection, anyone that had already had some type of participation in this matter, and told them that we needed immediate assistance, that we had an emergency on our hands. We started calling MEMA, we started calling Department of Fire Services, we started calling every state agency that we could think of to get up there and to take a look at what was going on so they would understand the magnitude of this situation. Now, a number of these agencies are already strapped because there was a number of long duration brush fires that were happening in Saugus, in Lynn, there was one in Marlborough, all throughout the state. When they came up, their first words were, "We've never seen anything like this." And these are the professionals that deal with this all the time. So we immediately started to get as many state agencies up there and immediately started to understand what exactly we could do, one, to deal with the fire, but also to prevent this from happening again. I know a number of people were frustrated, feeling that the DEP was not doing what they should have done. Again, we have to understand hindsight. We had COVID and that shut everything down. But now we're coming out of that, and we have the ability to deal with this head on. So with meetings with Senator Cronin's office, Congresswoman Lori Trahan's office, that has really helped spurred and brought attention to, from all of the state agencies, all the way up to the governor's office, assistance for the town. One of the things we've talked about repeatedly is that we need financial assistance. As a small town, we don't have a big budget, and all of the private excavating equipment that we had to bring in, there's going to be a cost associated with that. So there's a number of things that we're doing, right? We spoke with the Department of Revenue. They're going to assist us. One of the things was declaring the state of emergency, which would assist us with how we can move forward with paying our bills, and also make sure that we remain solvent so we can continue operations for the town for the rest of the fiscal year. I also spoke to one of the directors of the DP today, and she explained to me that based on their investigations that they had done pre-COVID, they were able to administer 4 declarations, administrative orders, cease and desist orders against 4 of the private haulers that were known to have been going up there and dumping debris, who, when they confronted them, they admitted that they had been up there dumping debris. And the private haulers have now been issued cease and desist orders. If they violate those cease and desist orders, they're subject to reporting to the Mass Environmental Police, who have that kind of long arm of the law that they can go after them in a criminal capacity. So one of the things that the DEP now is doing is starting to identify those companies that have been going up there and going after those companies. And these are big companies, they're legitimate companies who do not want to be associated with this type of operation. They do not want the DEP breathing down their neck. They do not want the environmental police coming after their business. Part of these administrative orders demand that these businesses have to provide to DEP a record of every truck that went up to that location, everything that was in that truck, all of their information. And so those types of things, they're hoping we will continue to get that type of information. We'll continue to go after those businesses, and those businesses talk to each other. So that word is going to quickly spread that the environmental police and the Department of Environmental Protection are on this. And what we're trying to do is get these companies to stop going up to that site. Unfortunately, while the fire was in full rage and we had highway at different locations, entry location points, they were still turning away trucks that wanted to come up and dump there while the fire was still burning. There's been other reports of trucks trying to gain access to the location while it was full of firefighting apparatus and the fire was is still going. People coming up there trying to dump, trucks having to be turned away. So that's something that we're working very diligently with. There's a number of other things that I'm not at liberty to discuss right now because this is an ongoing investigation. But I just want to assure the residents that the town is doing, from an administrative standpoint, we're doing everything that we possibly can, using every avenue through every state agency to make sure that we address this and try to stop this from happening. Our concern is that once the fire department pulls out of that location, they're going to continue to start again, accepting dump loads from trucks. And that is something that we're trying to do. So I just want to assure everybody, again, we'll continue to update you as these things come. These are things that I'm able to tell you about, but there's some other things that right now, unfortunately, we're not able to. And I hope that the residents will understand and be patient. We will convey the information that we get when we're able to do so. Dave, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Mary, do you have anything else to add or?
Nope, I just want.
Yeah, I just want to say that a huge thank you to Senator Cronin's office, Congresswoman Trahan's office. They've been extremely responsive, as have all the state agencies. Sometimes it's a little hard because we get a little frustrated that we're not getting responses as quickly as we'd like. But each of these agencies has to lay out their investigation and get their information in a way that protects that chain of custody, so they can move forward with their enforcement.
Okay. So again, I want to thank Chief Bussell for coming, Christine for that information. All right.